An ISA or an individual savings account is one of the best places to park your cash in order to build long-term wealth. And that's without being exposed to a totally legal bank heist from a little-known institution called HMRC. The ISA is one of the very few things left that the UK government actually don't tax us on. They allow us to invest up to £20,000 per tax year in a stocks and shares ISA, which is completely free of capital gains tax and dividend tax. Without the tax chain wrapped around our necks, what exactly is there to go wrong? Well, there's still a handful of rules and just some more general things that everybody should be aware of, because if you're not, it could cost you big time. So let's discuss the first mistake that people make. An ISA is not an investment in itself. Instead, it stands for an individual savings account, similar to that of a bank account. It's simply a place where you put your money and then decide what you want to do with it. For example, if your money's in a stocks and shares ISA account, well, obviously you're going to be investing in stocks and shares. However, if your money is in a lifetime ISA account, well, the purpose for that is for saving for a house or perhaps even for retirement. These accounts are quite special because they protect you from tax, also known as a tax wrapper. Think about it like this: After Eight, the chocolate is your investments and the wrapper is your account.
I love chocolate.
Now, the purpose of the wrapper on this After Eight is to protect me from all of the After Eights melting within inside this box. And in the context of an ISA, the wrapper is what protects you from tax instead. So now let's discuss the next mistake that people make, because this is one that I literally see on every single portfolio update that I make. So let me set the record straight. You do have lots of different ISA accounts at your disposal. We've discussed a couple of them in this video already. So you've got stocks and shares ISA, you've got a lifetime ISA, also known as a LISA. You've also got a cash ISA. We've even got a brand new British ISA, which was announced in the budget last week, along with a couple of others too. Right, this is Editor Mitch. I didn't like how I explained the rest of this point, so here's future me explaining it again. Now you can have as many of these different types of accounts as you like, but up until the end of this tax year, you were only previously allowed to invest in one stocks and shares ISA account per tax year. So for me, I personally had two accounts, one with Trading212 and one with Vanguard UK. But previously, or up until now, I had to commit to one of those accounts per tax year, meaning I could only actually invest my money in either Trading212 or my Vanguard UK portfolio, and not both, or at least not at the same time. However, the guidance has now changed, so from the 6th of April 2024, you can now invest in multiple stocks and shares ISA accounts with multiple different providers in the same tax year. However, you are only still allowed to invest your total £20,000 tax-free allowance. It's not £20,000 per account. So instead of just now having one After Eight, you can now have multiple different After Eights, which I guess can't exactly be a bad thing. But how exactly do you know which account would be best for you? Well, now let me dive into mistake number 3. Now, there are tons of different providers out there, so many in fact that you probably don't even know where to start. And to be honest, for the most part, they all do generally provide similar functionality, but there is one key critical thing that I need to emphasize the point on here, and that's fees, because different providers all have different fee structures. Some, like Trading212, have the headline that they're a commission-free broker. However, they do still have some smaller fees embedded into the platform. For example, you have FX fees of 0.15% on each transaction. You've also got deposit fees of 0.7% after you've deposited over £2,000 into your investment account. But despite those relatively small fees on the grand scheme of things, I personally find them to be one of the most competitive brokers out there, if not potentially one of the cheapest ones to use. And then on the flip side, you've got more traditional brokers, let's say like Hargreaves Lansdown, which are just absolutely on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to fees. Not only are their fee structures confusing, but actually it makes it barely worth investing altogether. And that's not something that I would say lightly. They have a 0.45% account fee for holding funds up to £250,000 in value, but that is capped at £45 per year, and that's just for holding your investments. Actually, to then go on to make an investment, if you're making less than 9 investments a month, that will cost you £11.95 per deal. So let's say hypothetically that you had a £10,000 investment portfolio and that you made 5 brand new investments this month in, say, Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Tesla. I worked that out to be a monthly fee just for holding the funds in the account of £3.75 per month, plus £59.75 to make all of those additional investments, for a grand total of £63.50 a month in fees.
That sounds expensive.
If you rolled that out over a year, that would be £762 that you'd pay to Hargreaves Lansdown, which is nearly 8% of the total value of your account. No, I don't know if it's just me, but I have no idea whatsoever why anybody would pay that much in fees. But I guess if you don't know where to look and you're only aware of Hargreaves Lansdown being the only investment broker, then I guess you're kind of stuck with them as a solution. So I would always say make sure you go and do your own due diligence. Now, one thing I would say, and this is another thing that I see all of the time in the comment section of my videos, but ISAs and investing more generally should not be used for the purpose of growing your money to cover any short-term expenses. One of the most common ones that I hear is that I'm using an ISA in my investments in order to save for a deposit for a house. Now, in my opinion, a stocks and shares ISA account should only be used as a long-term savings vehicle. And there are two really important reasons for this. The first thing being, if you plan to withdraw cash in the short term, let's say in the next 2 to 3 years or so, you are taking on a huge risk that the stock market or your investments in general will only ever head in an upward direction. And truth be told, markets frequently enough do exactly the opposite. Actually, statistically speaking, on any given year, you've got roughly about a 26% chance that your investment portfolio will decline in value. And that's based on roughly about 100 years worth of stock market data. And it would just be your luck, yes, you watching this video, that you'd stick your money into your stocks and shares ISA account in the hope that it would grow 10, 20, 30, perhaps even 40% over 2 or 3 years, and then the arse would fall out the market on the very year that you plan to put your deposit down on your house. For me personally, it's just far too high risk of a position to be in, especially when you're looking to get something that may be far too important for you and your partner. So I guess treat a stocks and shares ISA account like you would a retirement account, and instead make use of other short-term savings vehicles out there. For example, a lifetime ISA account is perfect if you're looking to save a deposit for a house. It's a far safer place to put your money in the short term, along with giving you a return on that money too. The second reason why just withdrawing cash more generally from your portfolio to pay for expenses is a really terrible idea is because the way your money grows is through something called the compound effect. It's the means of seeing exponential growth on your money, which comes down to 3 core components. And that's time, value, and returns. In essence, the longer your investment time horizon and the more that you can contribute to your portfolio, perhaps every single month, providing that you're able to obtain good, consistent returns over a long duration of time, you will end up with life-changing amounts of money if you're able to do this successfully. To give you just a rough and ready example, if you can invest £500 a month for 30 years, increasing that amount by 3% per year in line with inflation, at a market returning rate of 8%, you'd end up with £1 million. Now, if you've got kids or if you're thinking about kids, this should be one thing that you should certainly all consider. Here's a quick personal story. My mum put £10 a month into a savings account for me from birth and then gave me that money on my 18th birthday. And that worked out to be about £2,500, which included 18 years worth of interest. Now, obviously, I don't want to sound like an ungrateful little prick here because the money was super, super helpful at the time. It was helped me buy my first car, helped pay for my first year's insurance, which was just bloody astronomical. But there's certainly a more optimal solution that I wanted to share with you guys so you can give your kids a little bit more of a head start. And that's to open something called a Junior Stocks and Shares ISA account. It's got a deposit limit of £9,000 per year, but it can be opened for your child from birth and then given to them once they hit 18 years of age. Now, considering inflation and all that since I was a kid, and let's say that instead of £10 a month, you actually invested £25 a month into this type of account, and you invested it into something like a low-cost index fund doing about 7% per year, after 18 years, you would be able to hand over to your child the grand total of £10,855. For the price of one large meat delicious Domino's pizza, you could quite literally give your kids a great head start heading into adulthood in order to help them perhaps buy their first car or even perhaps help towards putting a deposit down on a house. So if you do have a little bit of surplus cash, be sure to invest for not just your future, but also for your kids' futures too. When I eventually have kids, that's definitely something I'll be doing. Now, this is a super common one, but it could cost you a ton of money if you get it wrong. And that's to make sure that you're using the right type of investment account for your personal finances. Now, naturally, personal finances by definition is personal. So everybody's situation, everybody's individual circumstances are obviously going to be different. But let me just explain the options that you have and distinguish the difference between the two. You predominantly have access to 2 core investment accounts, and you need to check with each broker how exactly they're set up. Now, over on Trading 212, they have an ISA account and an invest account. Now, your ISA account is your after rate with the tax wrapper, which we discussed earlier. Your invest account, on the other hand, doesn't have that same privilege. Now, if you did go on to open an invest account accidentally, perhaps because you didn't know the difference between an invest or an ISA account, and you start to make portfolio gains on that invest account, and perhaps you then come to sell and realize those gains at some point in the future, you could be quite exposed to quite a big tax bill. And whilst that may be the case, we all do still have something called a personal tax-free allowance, which is applicable to both capital gains tax and dividends too. Now, the government is progressively shafting us on our personal allowances, but right now, the dividend allowance is £1,000 for the 2023-2024 tax year. But that allowance is dropping down to just £500 from the 2024 to 2025 tax year. So if you're receiving anything above that in dividends, you'll be liable to pay these rates of tax, which vary based on your income tax band. And as always, these rules, if you like, can change in the future. But as long as you're making less than £500 in dividends in an invest account, then you're okay. And there is a very similar rule for capital gains tax too. Now, just to be clear, a capital gain is based on the proceeds or the profits from the investment that you've made once you've gone on to sell that asset. Now, that allowance currently sits at £6,000. However, for the 2024-2025 tax year, it's dropping to just £3,000. So if you happen to be watching this video in like 2026, then just make sure that you check out the government website for the current rules at the time. Now, naturally, as your portfolio grows, you would obviously hope to be making more capital gains than £3,000 and perhaps even more than £500 per year in dividends, in which case you could end up with a whopping tax bill at the end of each tax year. So if this is the case, a stocks and shares ISA where you have that tax wrapper certainly may be something to consider. The only real downside that I can see to the ISA account is that you're capped at investing £20,000 per year. But to be honest, if you're able to invest like 20 grand a year anyway, well, you're doing pretty well for yourself, and I don't really feel bad for you if you've got to then invest that money in an invest account which is uncapped, even if you might be subject to a little bit of tax. So if you are one of the 92% of people that currently don't invest in a stocks and shares ISA account, then I hope this video has certainly helped point you in the right direction. If it has, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and be sure to check out this video next. It's a tutorial of the Trading 212 app, which will certainly help get your investment portfolio started.